Whoso lists a hunt, I know where is an hind. That is the poem we're going to be covering today by Thomas Wyatt, and this is from the A-level poetry syllabus, Love Through the Ages. Firstly, we're going to do quite a deep dive into the context behind the poem. It's really relevant, so try and stick with it. Then we're going to do a literary analysis, analysing the language that's used throughout the poem. And lastly, we're going to look at structure, specifically the structure of the English sonnet. Sir Thomas Wyatt was an English politician and lyric poet who was born in 1503 at Allington Castle in Kent, and he died in 1542. While writing for the wealthiest and most privileged people in society, Wyatt's greatest poetic achievement is adapting the sonnet form into English. Because remember, sonnets originally came from Italy, so this poem is in fact one of the first poems to be written in English sonnet form. So Wyatt's career at the King's Court was a roller coaster. He was Esquire of the King's Court and Clerk of the King's Jewels. And because of his membership to the King's household, he was in a powerful position to influence the King. He also held many other important posts throughout his life, including the High Marshal of Calais and Commissioner of the Peace of Essex. Now we're going to look at Thomas Wyatt's love life, and this is particularly relevant because the poem he's written is a love poem. While Thomas Wyatt's career was progressing, he married Elizabeth Brooke, who was daughter of a lord. However, he became estranged from her on the grounds that she had committed adultery, so apparently she cheated on him. Wyatt had a lifetime mistress, Elizabeth Darrell, and he's also notoriously supposed to have been in love with King Henry VIII's second queen, Anne Boleyn. This story is getting more scandalous by the second. Henry VIII accused his queen, Anne Boleyn, of being unfaithful with at least 5 different men, when the reality of her crime was that she hadn't produced a male heir, and the king already had his eye on one of her ladies-in-waiting, Jane Seymour. So how are Henry VIII's relationships relevant to Thomas Wyatt? Sir Thomas Wyatt was one of the 5 men arrested for supposedly having an affair with Anne Boleyn. He was later released without charge, but he's thought to have witnessed Anne's execution from his cell. Wow, that's hardcore. So there might be a little bit of heartbreak in this poem. Let's jump right into it then. Whoso list a hunt, I know where is an hind. But as for me, Hellas, I may no more. The vain travail hath wearied me so sore, I am of them that farthest cometh behind. Yet may I by no means my wearied mind draw from the deer, but as she fleeth afore, fainting I follow, I leave off therefore, sithens in a net I seek to hold the wind. Who list her hunt? I put him out of doubt, as well as I may spend his time in vain. Engraven with diamonds in letters plain, there is written, her fair neck round about, Noli me tangere, for Caesar's I am, and wild for to hold, though I seem tame. This poem is about a man obsessively pursuing a woman he claims to love. However, this hunt is long and he's exhausted and he's starting to feel as if this whole thing is just in vain. He also warns anyone else trying to pursue her to stop. Their hunt is going to be in vain for 2 reasons. 1, she already belongs to a very powerful man. And 2, even though she seems tame, the reality is she's completely wild. The first aspect of this poem we're going to look at is the extended metaphor. So basically an extended metaphor is a theme that reoccurs throughout the poem. Now, this entire sonnet is kind of written as if he is a hunter pursuing a deer. So symbolically, Wyatt would, or the voice of the poet would represent the hunter, and the woman he's pursuing is the deer. Now think about this, a hunt is a wild and deadly pursuit. It's quite violent. So what is he saying about the sort of gender stereotypes of the time? Doesn't seem like a safe place to be for a woman. It's especially evidence of the way that women during this time were dehumanized or alluded to as animals. Also, think about how men were socially conditioned to think and talk about women in this sort of dehumanizing way, which it kind of implies that, women have no agency, they're not kind of smart enough to look after themselves, or, an animal is kind of like a second-class citizen during this time, and there's something jarring about it. It doesn't sit well with me. It's certainly not aged well. Wyatt doesn't challenge gender stereotypes, he actually reinforces them. So the men are supposed to hunt and the women are supposed to flee. And then we have alliteration, so that hunt, hellish sound, the hind, that soft H, it sounds really exhausting. And I feel like it's symbolic of his pursuit, how exhausting it is to be going after this woman and receiving nothing in return. It's just this constant, never-ending chase. Then we have assonance, vain, travail, so that long sort of vowel sound. There's a little bit of bitterness and resentment to it, as though he's kind of bitter that he's not gotten anywhere with this woman. We also have some enjambment. I love this technique and it speaks volumes of the chase. Look at the line, wearied mind draw from the deer. It runs on to the next line, and this is symbolic of the fact that this chase just goes on and on and on. Then we have this sort of archaic word, sithens, which don't worry about that just means since then. Another literary device used later on in the poem is personification. I seek to hold the wind. Think about what it would be like to try and hold the wind. It's an air element. It's literally like, it's intangible in some respects because it can't be held. It can't be put in a box. It can't be held still in one place. It kind of seems impossible. So this personification, it stresses the fact that he feels like to catch this woman, to somehow make her his wife or get her into bed. We don't know. It's very ambiguous. But to do either one of those things, it seems impossible. Then we have some stunning imagery, graven in diamonds, in letters plain. Now this refers to a necklace that she wears around her neck. Typically women weren't really allowed to work to pay for their own diamonds, so we can safely assume that these were either inherited through the family line or gifted to her by an admirer, maybe a wealthy gentleman who wants to marry her, or somebody who she already belongs to. And I'm saying belongs because that was the way that men thought about women in this time. They were sort of ornaments, objects to be owned and passed from father to suitor in a very sort of traditional, quite oppressive way. Diamonds are also a symbol of opulence, and there's something about it being written around her fair neck. There's this kind of, it's quite sensual imagery, he's staring at her neck, he's admiring her neck. So there's this real lusty longing for this woman in this portrayal of the diamonds and how they kind of rest a lot on her collarbone. Then we have a metaphor. Noli me tangere, for Caesar's I am. I hope I pronounced that right. Like I did not do Latin at school. I have no idea how to speak Latin, but that's kind of my interpretation of it. But it translates to, do not touch me, for I belong to Caesar. So this is the diamond necklace. This is what it says in these. It's quite threatening, isn't it, to have that. You're kind of, again, wearing this sort of collar. It makes me think of a pet. And the way pets obviously have like a little trinket on there, which usually has their name, who they belong to, etc. It's kind of this symbol of ownership as well. Now, Caesar was a Roman general and statesman who played a critical role in the historical events that led to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. But all you need to do and convey to an examiner is that the high-ranking, powerful person who is husband to this woman he's pursuing, all you need to know is he is as powerful as Caesar was. So that's a pretty big deal. And it kind of gives us a very big clue that the person he's talking about is Henry VIII, and the woman he's pursuing is one of Henry VIII's wives. And historians have implied that it was Anne Boleyn. So that was why I was telling you all the stuff about Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII in the beginning. And what's even funnier is there are so many similarities between Caesar and Henry VIII. You wouldn't know it unless, you were specifically given an assignment on this, but they both became leaders when they were teenagers. They were both literate, charismatic, influential and interested in politics. However, the downside of both of these characters was that they both incurred huge debt. They were quite tyrannical in their decision-making. They imprisoned their subjects and executed them on charges of treason, sometimes without any evidence. So when Wyatt mentions Caesar, it seems as though he's implying these sort of less favourable traits of Henry's character. And in a way, Wyatt is subtly getting away with insulting the king at the time. The last point I wanted to cover in terms of the deep dive of just the poem in general is, interestingly, there's a long history of royalty owning and protecting deer. The poem alludes to the Roman author Solinus, who said white stags found in the Roman Empire 300 years after Caesar's death had the words "Noli me tangere Caesaris sum" inscribed on their collars. And obviously, these Latin words translate to "do not touch me, for I am Caesar's." So even long after his death, this emperor still owns these stags. There's something really sinister about that in terms of Wyatt saying, that this is also written on her necklace. This is symbolic. I don't think this would actually have been the case. I don't think she literally wore this necklace, but it was definitely Wyatt making a statement about who she was beholden to in more ways than one. So a sonnet is made of two parts: an octet, so that's the first 8 lines, and a sestet, the last 6 lines. Here, the rhyme scheme reinforces that idea with the first 8 lines linked together in a pattern of ABBA, ABBA, and the last 6 lines CDDC, EE. So traditionally, a sonnet is split in 2 with a problem or a question presented at the beginning of the poem. Then there's a shift in tone or attitude in line 9, which is called a volta. Usually, after the volta, there is a solution presented in the sestet. However, in this sestet, there is no solution. Instead, we have Wyatt's resignation from the hunt because his persistent advances have been pointless. Okay, that is everything. Thank you so much for sticking with it. If you want some extra notes, head to Patreon. Let me know what you learned in the comments below, and if you fancy just saying hi, just send me a message on Instagram. I love it when you guys do that. There's a few of you that have got in touch. It's brilliant. I love it. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.